All right, everybody. Well, welcome back. First of all, everybody have a good break. It's nice to have some time off from school, a little time with family. Anybody get stuck in any snowstorms? I did. I was stuck up in Des Moines. We got 9 inches of snow up there. Had to spend all of Saturday inside. It actually was nice, though. Just played board games, watched some movies. Solid little day. All right, today we're going to be talking about visualization and mental imagery. All right? The main reason for this is everything's going to happen twice. Once in your brain when you picture it, right, and once in real life. Okay, so think about mental and physical. With that, if you train your mind, you're going to transform your game. Mental reps are vital. Mental reps are valuable. I know that they seem silly at times, right, because it's not the actual thing that you're going to be doing. But they can help you build confidence and precision. And we'll talk a little bit later about even more that they can help you with. Okay? The main reason for that is because the visualization, just you imagining it in your brain, it's going to activate the same neural pathways that it actually physically doing it does. The only difference is the coordination aspect, right? But when it comes to teaching your body how to do a task, imagining yourself doing it well with as much detail and context as you possibly can provide it is valuable, right? It is helpful. It does actually make you better at whatever you're wanting yourself to do. Okay? And at the end of the day, if we look at the people who are the best at what we want to do, the best in the world, practice it. The best in the world, imagine it. The best in the world, rehearse their success and the adversity that they go through and how they're going to overcome it. Okay? So with that, anybody in here know who Manny Ramirez is? Everybody? All right? A lot of people? Most people? Okay. So he was a really good hitter for the Red Sox. Before that, our guy that we've talked about before, Zach Sorensen, got the chance to work with him when he was with the Cleveland Indians at the time. Okay? And he had a thing where he eventually was like, hey, this is my first job as an actual mental performance coach. I'd really like to see what our best player does to kind of help coach up other people, other aspects. Okay? And one of the things that he told him is, he was like, hey, Manny, could I just kind of watch your post-game or pre-game routine, what you're going to do the next day? I'll just be a fly on the wall. You won't even notice that I'm there. I won't ask you any questions. I won't bother you. So Manny finally says, okay, fine, yeah, just, don't bother me. Nothing. And sure enough, he gets an opportunity to really see what Manny does to overcome some adversity because he has a bad game. He goes 0 for 3, 2 strikeouts and a groundout, I think is exactly what it was. And he's excited. Zach's excited. He says, man, I really get to see what the best hitter on our team does to overcome a bad outing like that. And so they get there the next day before the next game. Manny goes to the film room, right, and he's able to kind of sit down and he sits, puts some headphones on, turns one of their computer screens on, starts jamming to some Latin music, right? And then next thing you know, he turns on this film. So Zach's expecting it to be his, Zach's expecting it to be the strikeouts that he had last night, right? The struggles that he's been going through recently. And Manny's going to dissect it and really break it down. But what it ends up being is a 2 to 3 minute highlight film of Manny just hitting a double, then a home run, then another home run, then a double, then a home run, then a double. And it was just 2 minutes straight, an entire song's worth of him at his absolute best. At the end of that, Zach's really confused. So he finally sits down and he's like, I know I wasn't going to ask you any questions, but can I just ask one question? You struggled really bad yesterday. Why are you just watching film of you being successful? And Manny turns to him and says, why would I pay attention and want to look at what I was doing when I know that I can just be this guy? It's like the guy who struggled yesterday, the guy who struck out twice, the guy who grounded out and mishit the ball, that's not me. This guy who hits doubles and home runs, that's me. That's who I want to be. I want to reinforce that guy. I want to remember what it's like to be that guy. I don't want to try to fix whatever went wrong yesterday. Just go back to being me. All right? And I think that's a really powerful story of not only the value of a personal highlight reel, but also kind of an approach to what are we going to do when we fail? okay, when we struggle, okay? Like a lot of the time, if anybody's pitched with me, if you have thrown a good pitch during that outing and you all of a sudden throw a bad one, oftentimes I'll say, so what? Just go back to throwing the good one. Doesn't matter, right? But how often do we feel ourselves, we'll throw 4 good ones in a row, 4 good breaking balls in a row, then we throw one bad one, and we think, I suck now. My curveball sucks. It's like, no. If anything, that's the fluke. The one bad one's the fluke, right? And we should kind of think about that when it comes to our own personal highlight reel. If you have a bad game, understand that that's the fluke, right? It's up to you to figure out how to respond. Are you going to just go back to being the successful pitcher, or are you going to mull over the fact that you struggled once, okay? Are you going to be like Manny and, just move on and visualize and focus on you at your best? Or are you going to, really try to pick apart every single thing that you did incorrectly, right? Are you going to obsess over that? Okay, something to think about. Because at the end of the day, those high performers, they're going to visualize their best selves. They're going to visualize how they move when they're at their best. They're going to visualize the mistakes and them overcoming it. They're not going to try to fix the mistakes. They're going to be able to say, hey, I struck out that time, but I bounced back, right? And they're more concerned with the bounce back, less concerned with the fact that they struggled, okay? So either in your head or in your video, I encourage you to come up with a highlight reel, all right? Then also, really interesting study that was done in 1996, all right, at the University of Chicago. There's a doctor called Dr. Blaslato. I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly, but his name doesn't matter. But Dr. Blaslato took, how many was it? It was a group of students, right, randomly selected from the college population, and basically gave them 3 separate tasks over a 30-day period. He had one group. So before they even started this, they had all of them do a free throw test, right? And just said, hey, out of, I don't know how many it was, however many numbers of free throws they took, they had them do it and marked how many they got correct, how many they missed, okay? And he split this group of people into 3 groups. One of them, he said, imagine we didn't even do this. Don't worry about it. Don't even touch a basketball for the next 30 days and just come back 30 days from now and we'll retest you. Second group, I want you to go to the gym every single day, at least 5 times a week, right? And I want you to practice your free throws, okay? And then in 30 days, we'll come back and retest you. And then finally, the third group, all I want you to do is spend however much time, a couple minutes or the equivalent of 100 reps per day of just imagining yourself shooting a free throw, the equivalent of that, okay? And then come back in 30 days and we test you, okay? The first group, right, the one who didn't do anything, surprisingly, or not surprisingly at all, didn't get better at all. Surprise, surprise. They didn't do anything, they didn't work at it, they didn't get better. The second group that practiced every day, right, they showed a 24% improvement, okay? And then the surprising thing here is that 23% improvement was from the people who just visualized it. All they did was imagine themselves shooting free throws. And they got almost as good as the people who actually put the practice in, okay? And there's actually scientific reasoning for this. Think about it this way. Has anybody had a dream that in the moment, while you were in the dream, it felt extremely real? Everybody, right? Raise a hand. Pretty much everybody knows what that feels like. Your brain does not know the difference between something you are imagining and something that you are actually experiencing when it is that vivid, when it is that accurate, okay? And so you actually can trick yourself into getting better at tasks just by visualizing it. You can trick yourself into getting better at things just by getting those extra reps in. Does that make sense? Okay? So let's use that to our advantage. All right? A couple key concepts before we move on. Mental reps. Don't overlook them. They're vital. They're just as powerful, just as influential as physical reps. Okay? Everything happens twice. You have the chance to practice things mentally before you try to practice them physically. Right? The other aspect of this, the caveat, is make sure that you look and seek out people who are successful at doing what you want to do. Right? If you're trying to get better at fielding at first base, watch a good first baseman. Watch them do it. Imagine yourself doing it the way that they're doing it. Emulate it. right? Then try to do the task yourself. That makes sense? Same thing pitching. If you see somebody with a good breaking ball, look at how it comes out of their hand and then imagine what that feels like, all right? And then try to emulate it, okay? Train failure, okay? Don't just do it with the good stuff, do it with the bad stuff, okay? We've talked before, a couple weeks ago, we talked about having a release and a refocus routine, right? A plan for when everything hits the fan, what are we going to do? Okay? Are we just going to fold? Or are we just going to move on? Or are we just going to chalk up this loss and try again tomorrow? Right? Or are we going to double down, right, and be better for it? Okay? So make sure that you train your failure. Train yourself struggling and then overcoming it. Train yourself going through those recovery routines, through those focus routines. Okay? Then finally, the highlight reel, we talked about that, the value of that. Look at yourself at your best. Emphasize that. Okay? And then also that thought, image, feel, that sequence for refocus that we talked about, the more that you practice this, the more that you practice what it feels like to be successful and imagining what it looks like to do things well, you'll remember what that feels like, and therefore your TIFF, right, your thought, image, or feeling for your refocus routine is going to be that even that much better. Okay? But you have to be intentional and pay attention to that stuff to be able to go back to it. Does that make sense? If you never remember what it feels like to do something successfully and you're only ever focusing on what it means when you struggle, okay, you're not going to be as good at it. Okay? At the end of the day, see it before you do it. Okay? So, discussion, go ahead and raise a hand or just start talking if you want to share. Have you ever imagined success before it happened? If so, what did it feel like? Anybody have any stories? Yeah, Michael, go for it.
It was great. Right before every game, whenever I throw, I sit there in my bed and I visualize every single pitch, every inning, what it's going to look like, what the result's going to be. And then you carry that over to the next day. The mental reps are just as important as the physical reps. And I strongly urge you all to just the day before the game, the day of the game, before the game, sit there, even before you go out for your inning, sit there and visualize each pitch, what it's going to do. Imagine that success. Imagine throwing it past the hitter's barrel every single time. It's so important.
And then when it happens, right, it feels like you've been there before, right? Because you have. Your brain's been there, right? Okay, so don't overlook that. It's awesome, right? And you feel like a genius when everything goes to plan, right? When you script it all out. Now, don't think too far in advance, but imagine what it feels like. Imagine what it feels like to be successful. Run yourself through different situations so when it actually happens, you feel prepared, right? And you have the confidence that you need to overcome any adversity that you face, okay? Now, with that, do you ever visualize success before an at-bat, before a bullpen, before practices, or before games, right? If not, I encourage you to do so, okay? I know it can feel a little hokey, right, at times, but the more that you do it and the higher level that you go in baseball, the more commonplace it's going to be, right? For me, it got to the point where I started doing it because I saw all these higher level programs than the one that I was playing at, all of their pitchers were doing it, right? I really looked up to TCU a lot, right? I really liked Coach Schlossnagel and everything that he was doing there. When I was in high school, they were the best. They were super cool. They were putting out videos. It was super sick, right? But I saw that their pitchers, they were doing shadow bullpens. They were doing visualization. They were talking about their routines. They were talking about the process. From the moment they woke up in the morning to the moment they went to bed at night, they were intentional. They were paying attention, right? And I wanted to emulate that. That's what made me start doing it. But the higher level that you go in this game, the more people are going to visualize it, okay? Think about it this way. If you don't do these things, if you don't visualize, what aspect of your game do you think you could use more mental reps? What aspect of your game do you think you could use a little more confidence, a little extra polish on? All right, anybody want to share? If not, no big deal. Okay, all right, we'll move on. But just think about this. Yeah, Michael, go.
Not letting that pitch dictate the next pitch.
It's a good one. It's a good one. You have to practice that in order to be able to do it. It's way too easy to let pitch by pitch affect one another, right? But that's something you can practice, okay? Practice your failure so you can overcome it better, okay? especially if you struggle with that. Right? I had the luxury of working with a mental performance client who basically came to see me because he could not handle failure well at all. Right? And we met pretty regularly over a long amount of time, and we actually got to the point where he was confident failing. I know that sounds crazy, but he knew he could overcome it. He no longer had to be afraid of failing because he knew he could handle it. Right? It's very easy to think, oh, I don't want to fail because that I don't like that feeling. Or in his case, he knew, like, hey, if I struggle, the rest of the game is done. Like, there's no way I'm bouncing back from it. Right? He knew that about himself, and he was able to overcome it. Okay? So what part of your game needs more mental reps? Think about it that way. All right. As an example, I know that this feels weird, especially if you've never done this before. It's very, very odd. Okay? But what I'm going to do is we're going to do both a mind movie and then we're going to train failure, but I'm going to encourage you to do it with me. Okay? This is going to be a lead visualization or lead mental imagery. Okay? And the more that you practice this, the more that you do it, the easier it's going to be for you, to do it on your own. Does that make sense? All right, so I'm going to encourage you guys to all get comfy and go ahead and close your eyes. Now, before we start, let's get more specific. I want you to imagine whether are you stepping on the mound or are you stepping in the box? If I raise a hands, keep your eyes closed. Do you want to imagine yourself stepping in the box? Raise your hand. Good, hands down. If you're imagining yourself stepping onto the rubber, raise your hand. Very good, hands down. Even more specific. Before we even step on the rubber, I want you to think and look down at your cleats. What color are they? Is it a dirt mound or a turf mound? What color is the dirt or turf? Get specific. Is this an early spring game? Is it cold out? Is it chilly, almost like a day like today, or is it warm, middle of the summer? Now, as we're stepping on the rubber or stepping in the box, I need you to imagine yourself with the utmost confidence, the confidence that you wish you had. Stepping on the mound or stepping into the box with that swagger, the swagger that you can only hope to achieve. I want you to imagine your mechanics to be pristine, the exact way that you dream that they would be. I want you to pay attention to the tempo at which you move. Okay? Feel yourself moving very intentionally, very in control. I want you to go through a rep, watching yourself do it to the best of your ability. If you're in the box, you're squaring up that fastball that you're looking for. If you're on the mound, you're placing that pitch in the perfect location to dodge the barrel. After that success, I want you to pay attention. What does your body language look like? Okay? What does it feel like? Is it high energy naturally coming out of you? Or is it different? Okay? What's your focus like? What are you focusing on? What are you paying attention to? And even more importantly, what does your self-talk sound like? What do you say to yourself after you're successful? What do you say to yourself in this ideal highlight reel movie? I want you to go through one more rep, one more success. See yourself at your best. Pitchers, imagine your best fastball, best location. Hitters, imagine you fighting through that 0-2 count and doing your job. Afterwards, either way, coming off the mound, imagine yourself walking into the dugout getting congratulated by your teammates. All right, go ahead and take a deep breath. Bring your head back up, eyes open. Okay? That is the level of detail that we need to get to. Okay? even more so. One thing, if you guys, especially on the mind movie aspect, if you guys want to do more of those guided ones, right, I encourage you to Google that. There's plenty on YouTube, right? They're basically sometimes guided mental performance, guided meditation, sports-specific meditation, okay? Or you can look up Brian Cain that we've talked about before, and he has a couple different ways that you can kind of run through your own visualization routine, right? One thing specifically that I've seen and done myself to a lot of success is shadow bullpens, okay? So a lot of people will do imaginary bullpens, okay? We actually were lucky enough to, two of our college guys were back over Thanksgiving break, and one of them came in and threw a bullpen, and I asked the second guy, hey, what are you doing today? He's like, oh, I'm throwing a bullpen too. All right. The first guy gets done. Me and him are looking at his TrackMan, and the next guy steps up, and I'm like, hey, if you wait a second, I'll be able to get TrackMan on. He's like, no, I won't need it today. I was like, okay, all right, I'll just turn it off. Then turn around, I look over, and he's 15 pitches into a no-pitch bullpen. He hasn't picked up a baseball, but he's been pitching, right? Every aspect of pitching, except for having the ball in his hand, he's been doing. He's been getting a sign. He's been checking the runners, right? He's been reacting to whether or not he hit his spot or not. Been doing it all on his own, right? And I ask him, I'm like, whoa, what are we doing? It's like, oh, it's a shadow bullpen day. But when I asked him earlier, hey, do you have a pen today? He said, yeah. Because for him, that's just as serious, just as real as having an actual pen. Does that make sense? Okay? And like I said, the higher level you get, the more common that'll become. Okay? So something to think about. All right, we're going to go through it again. This time we're going to train failure. Okay? Before we do it, I want you to pay attention and remember that refocus or release routine. Does anybody remember what those each are? Anybody? Yeah? You got an idea?
A refocus routine is something that you do, like you do like with your hat or something.
Mm-hmm.
You refocus when things start to go bad.
Yeah, 100%. So that refocus routine's a little bit shorter. So that means you're just barely knocked off kilter, okay? And then you're locking yourself back in. So it can be a deep breath on a focal point, physical association if you want it, and then a final thought image feel. That release routine, that's where we need to do something physical. Another deep breath on a focal point, okay? You need to have a statement that gets you locked back in, right? And then you go through the refocus routine as well, okay? So for example, I'll share mine with you, okay? For me, my focal point always, so for my refocus or my release routine, was the top of the scoreboard, okay? A lot of the scoreboards will have little clocks there or just little designs. I would stare right at that. The nice thing about that is if anybody who's watching me, they just thought I was checking the scoreboard, right? All right, but in reality, I was locking back in after whatever just happened, okay? And on top of that, I'd also take my hat off, okay? So I'd step in there. My physical association would be taking my hat off. That would be part of my release routine. My refocus routine, I'll just be sitting there, deep breath, lock myself back in, okay? So what, next pitch? Step back on the mound, okay? For my release routine, I needed to get rid of whatever just happened. I just gave up a hit, gave up a single, gave up some runs, okay? Hat comes off, looking at the focal point. And I'm not putting the hat back on until I'm ready to lock myself back in, until I'm ready to move on and see what the next pitch has in store, okay? But as soon as I do that, another deep breath on the focal point. So what, next pitch? Let's go, okay? All right? So let's imagine that as we go. This one's going to be a little bit shorter, right? But I want you to imagine yourself in that same situation we were just in, okay? The mind movie, right? That highlight reel that we were just doing, okay? But this time, the pitch gets delivered, and it's a bad call. Borderline pitch, and the call doesn't go your way. All right? On the hitting side, it's a little bit away, all right? But he calls it a strike. On the pitching side, you thought it was there, all right? You thought it was good height, but he called it a little low. I want you to imagine yourself, how are you going to respond to that? Okay? What are you going to do? What's your natural reaction? Is it frustration? Is it disbelief? Do you just want to leave automatically, right? Or do you barely even register it? Either way, I want you to visualize your recovery. Is it just going to be a refocus routine? Or are you going to need a full release? Whatever it is, whatever your routine is, I want you to imagine yourself going through it. I want you to have a good deep breath on a focal point. I want you to imagine yourself resetting and moving on. Whatever adjustment that needs to be made, whether it's just locking back in or something physical, right? I want you to make it. Then you're either going to step back in the box or step back on the rubber with your new plan in mind, right? Your adjustment. And I want you to see yourself execute. Okay? Not letting that one ball turn into two, or not letting one pitch negatively impact the next. Okay? All right, go ahead and relax, deep breath, bring yourself out of it. Okay? And you can do the same concept with an air, with a hung pitch, with a slump, whatever you want to do. Okay? Being able to adjust, right? And practice. How are we going to overcome adversity? Okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about real life application. A lot of the time when we're talking about this visualization, people think about, when am I going to use this? Right? When do I do it? Okay? A couple different options for you. What a lot of people that I've seen do that have been extremely successful is they do it before their workouts. Right? So either their weight room workouts or their actual practices, baseball practices, they'll sit in their locker and have their head down and kind of just lock in for a minute. Okay? They'll do the same thing before games. They'll do the same thing before they step in the box. Okay? Right? But a couple different ideas. So just 2-3 minutes before a warm-up. So it even could be part of your, or 2-3 minutes before workouts, it could even be part of your warm-up. Okay? Imagine you guys all do PT, right? Any of them that you're laying down with, excuse me, that's prime visualization time, right? You get done with that rep, just take a quick second and imagine how that day of work is going to go, right? Imagine how the bullpen you're about to throw is going to go. Imagine how that day of catch play is going to go. Imagine how the day of lifting is going to go, okay? Just 2-3 minutes, nothing crazy, right? And then finish the rest of your warm-up and get ready to go. Other way to do it is night before, like Michael was talking about earlier. Imagining how the game the next day is going to go, right, as you lay down, okay? You do the same thing pre-game, sitting in the locker, like I was saying, okay? Or maybe in your car, right? Before you open that door, before you put your jersey on, how are things going to go, right? Imagine it, right? Imagine yourself getting called into the game, getting the opportunity that you're looking for. Imagine yourself being successful, right? Or imagine yourself struggling and overcoming it, okay? Both are valuable. Then finally, add this into your pre-pitch, okay? I remember all the time, like especially like when I was pitching, I would oftentimes imagine, the MLB The Show, like data, like I could imagine like my pitches over in the corner and I knew what button to press for my pitches, and I would imagine how my ball had to like travel to go where I wanted it to. So I knew where I wanted to start the pitch, right? I would imagine that whole thing. Imagine my little meter as I was going, right? Everything, right? But a lot of the time, that pre-pitch mentality, I'd be able to run through it real quick before I even started. So then by the time that I came set, or by the time that I started to pitch, I'd already imagined it. Yeah, it was like a video game way to do it, but it worked out, right? It worked really well. I knew exactly what I had to do in order to get the result that I wanted, and it worked for me, okay? So you could do it pre-pitch. Same thing. Before you step in, staring at the barrel, getting a good breath. Maybe you're taking your practice swing. You actually tell yourself, this is where I'm making contact with it, okay? This is what it's going to feel like, okay? When this pitcher puts this ball right here, okay? And I'm on time for it and I don't miss my pitch, okay? Finally, at the end of the day, key takeaways. Everything's going to happen twice, first in your mind, then in real life, okay? It's up to you to take advantage of that. A lot of people just rely on this one. They just hope that it goes well, right? They don't even take advantage of the fact that they could do it in their mind beforehand, okay? And at the end of the day, this part matters a lot, okay? If you can see it, if you can imagine yourself doing it, it's possible, okay? Thomas and I were having a great conversation this morning, right, about this very topic, okay? We were talking about, he was talking to one of our rehabbing guys that's in here, and he was kind of explaining how important it was for him to imagine himself throwing 100 miles an hour, right? Because everybody thought that he was insane for trying to even achieve that, right? Nobody thought that he'd be able to get signed. He was an okay college pitcher, right? But he had to believe it, and he saw himself doing it. He knew, right, that if he dedicated himself, he'd be able to accomplish it. But by him imagining it, he started to notice the things that he needed to do in order to get the most out of himself, right? Has anybody ever heard of a new car, or heard of a new pair of shoes, or heard of a new hat that's out, and then all of a sudden you start seeing it everywhere? I remember that all the time, where I saw these. Most recently, I just got a new car, and I was like, "Oh, these are pretty nice," And I saw mine. Then next thing I know, I'm like, "Oh, they're all over the place. Everybody has one." I'm like, "What in the world's going on?" Okay, but the reason for that is because you're aware of it. You're paying attention to it. I have one now, right? It's part of me, and I notice it more. Same thing is true. If you can see it, the likelihood of you seeing the things that you need to see in order to accomplish it are higher. Does that make sense? Right? If you need to be the type of person, right, who goes to bed early, right, and makes the most of their day, and does all those kind of things, you need to tell yourself that before you can act that way. That makes sense? Or it's going to help you act that way, right? If you constantly fill yourself full of people who are better or as good as you want to be, right, your algorithm, right, on social media is going to follow that same thing. You're going to see people who are dedicated, see people who are successful in what you want to be successful at, right? And then you, by acting like them, right, by emulating them, you might just find yourself doing it. Does that make sense? Okay? So use this to your benefit. If you can imagine it, I encourage you to do so. If you can see yourself doing it, just see what changes in your life may come up because of you noticing that. All right? Does that concept make sense to everybody? Okay? Cool. Final thing here. What's one part of your game that you'll visualize tonight? Okay, a little challenge question for you. If you want to share, go ahead. If not, I just want you to think about it. What's one part of your game that you're going to visualize tonight? And finally, take this with you. What does your best self look like? Okay, when you're at your best, whether it's baseball or life, whether it's school, being the best version of yourself as you possibly can be, what does it look like? What does it feel like? And what do you move like? How do you go about your day? Okay? I want you to challenge yourself to visualize that, right? To imagine that, to see yourself as the best possible version of yourself, baseball or not, right? And see what happens. Okay? Anybody have any questions? No? Cool. Great work. This is always one of my favorite ones. This is super powerful. Take advantage of it, okay? This is a big one, all right? Have a good day.